You know that feeling, right? You have something super important you're supposed to be doing, but you find yourself doing literally anything else. Today, we're going to unpack the surprising science behind why we procrastinate and why our brains choose to put things off, even when we know it's a terrible idea.
Does this hit a little too close to home? You've got that huge project looming, and all of a sudden, organizing your sock drawer seems like the most critical mission on planet Earth. Well, if that's you, you are definitely not alone. And it turns out there's a really specific, kind of weird reason our brains pull this stuff.
This whole behavior is built around a central mystery, something that psychologists have a pretty cool name for: the procrastination paradox. So let's dive in and break down what that actually means. And sure it is, the heart of the paradox. Just think about this for a second. We're voluntarily choosing to do something that we know, for a fact, is going to make us feel worse down the line. It's a totally irrational move, which is our first big clue that this has absolutely nothing to do with logic. So let's just get this straight because it's so important. If you have ever beaten yourself up, called yourself lazy for procrastinating, you can stop. Seriously. The research is pretty clear on this. This isn't about being bad at time management or not having enough willpower. It's all about handling tough emotions. We're not avoiding the task. We're avoiding the uncomfortable feeling that the task stirs up. Okay, so if it's about dodging feelings, how does that avoidance get so baked into our system that it becomes a habit? Well, that brings us to the psychology of delay and the powerful engine that keeps this whole cycle running. And that engine is called the procrastination loop. This thing is a beast. It's a habit that literally feeds itself, operating on a really simple, super predictable cycle. And man, once you're in it, it can be incredibly hard to get out. This breaks it down perfectly. It really only has three parts. First, you get the trigger. That uncomfortable task pops up, and you feel bored or anxious or just, ugh. Second, the routine kicks in. You immediately pivot to something way more fun, like scrolling through your phone or watching a quick video. And third, you get the reward. Your brain gets a nice little hit of feel-good chemicals, and you get this immediate but, and this is key, temporary relief. And because that reward feels good, your brain learns to do it all over again next time.
That really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The trigger is the starting pistol for this entire race to nowhere. So what are these awful feelings that we're so desperate to avoid?
Well, it turns out it can be a whole mix of things. As you can see here, for a lot of people, it's just plain old boredom. Or maybe the task is super frustrating, or just really, really hard. It could even be something that's totally unstructured, so you don't even know where to begin. Or maybe it just feels pointless. Any one of these feelings is enough to kick that loop into high gear. Okay, so we've covered the psychology. Now let's go a level deeper. Let's look at what is physically happening inside our brains during this whole internal tug-of-war. When you're sitting there staring at that blank page, there is a literal battle for control breaking out inside your skull. It's a showdown between the ancient, impulsive part of your brain and the modern, logical part. On one side, you've got the limbic system. And I love this analogy. Just think of it as your inner toddler. It runs purely on feelings. It wants what it wants, and it wants it right now. On the other side is your prefrontal cortex. This is the adult in the room. This is the part of you that thinks about the future, that makes plans, and that tries to say, hey, maybe we should calm down a little. So when you decide to watch just one more episode instead of starting that presentation, you know exactly what just happened. Your inner toddler threw a massive tantrum, and the adults in the room, your prefrontal cortex, just gave in to get a moment's peace. The limbic system's demand for instant relief won the day. Now, this might all sound kind of bleak, like we're just doomed to be ruled by our impulses, but here is the good news. Understanding this battle means we can start to rig the fight. So let's talk about some real strategies to help the adult in the room finally win. And this really gets to the core of the solution. So many of us think we just need more willpower, that we need to muscle through it. But that's like trying to argue with that screaming toddler. It's exhausting and it almost never works. The smarter way is to outsmart your brain's wiring, not just fight it head on. The real trick is to make the task seem less scary to your inner toddler. A super powerful one is the 2-minute rule. Just tell yourself you only have to do it for 120 seconds. Anybody can do that. Another is to shrink the task. Break that huge mountain down into tiny little pebbles. Once you take that first tiny step, you prove to your brain, hey, this isn't so bad. And it makes it so much easier to keep going. Of all the strategies we just talked about, there is one that researchers point to over and over again as the most fundamental, the one that really makes all the others even possible.
And it is this idea right here from Dr. Tim Peifel, who's a top researcher on this stuff. The shame and the guilt that we feel after we procrastinate, that just becomes another negative feeling, which then acts as the next trigger to procrastinate again. It's a horrible, vicious cycle. Self-compassion is how you break it.
And this isn't just some nice, fluffy idea. It's actually backed up by data. They did a study and found that students who consciously forgave themselves for putting off studying for one exam were actually less likely to procrastinate on the next one. By letting go of the guilt, they made the task feel less threatening the next time around. How cool is that? So let's bring it all home with that. Forgiving yourself, that's step 0. Step 1 is just to begin. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. What is the absolute smallest version of that thing you've been avoiding that you can do for just 2 minutes right after this?